Lhasa, ancient and mysterious, hardly touched by the 20th century, where centuries-old religious traditions are as profound today as they were when the first Dalai Lama ascended the Golden Throne. Tibet's capital, perched high on the remote trans-Himalayan plateau, has a special fascination for the modern world. For Lhasa is the northern gateway to the world's greatest mountain, Everest. Lhasa is a transition, a time transition from modern reality to the timeless snows which form the route, to the roof of the world, a route that 5 young Australians were determined to conquer. Tim Macartney-Snape, at 28, an experienced mountaineer, a natural leader. Lincoln Hall, also 28, who shares the leadership duties. Andy Henderson, a computer engineer, completes the trio of 28-year-olds, while Jeff Bartram, who travels the world as a climbing instructor, is the veteran at 33. Greg Mortimer, 32, is a geologist whose work has taken him as far as the mountains of Antarctica. 10 hours out of Lhasa, the road to Everest suddenly stopped. The Sangpo River barred the way, flooded by melted snow. Trucks had been waiting for 6 days since the normal ferry was stranded. This was the answer. A flimsy coracle made from yak hide, a mode of transport almost as old as man himself. But it did the job and moved the team across the river.
Sail. This is like 5 men in a boat. Yeah, don't rock the boat. Soon goes in the water. I suppose seems they go for it, don't they?
Mile after dusty mile, over the worst roads in the world, closer and closer to Everest. And as the air grew thinner as the altitude increased, the sense of expectation soared. 3 years before, the team had set its goal, to become the first Australians to reach the summit of Everest. And now the object of these years of planning, persistence, and dedication was about to reveal itself. They could feel the fabled mountain, but low cloud veiled it. Suddenly, the clouds lifted to unveil Everest. Everest. To the people of Tibet, she is the mother goddess of the earth, evoking majesty, power, and destiny. In the foothills stand the memorials to other men and women who came to conquer and gave their lives instead. For the young Australians, it was time for their appointment with destiny. Base camp. Just about 5,000 meters and 20 kilometers from the mountain. This was the end of the line for the trucks. And from here on, the 3 tons of food and equipment had to be hauled up the mountain by man or yak. Although it seems like a mass of equipment, in real terms, the Australian expedition is one of the smallest ever attempts to take the mountain. Historically, the technique was to mount an army-style assault, to lay siege, with an army of porters, dozens of climbers, and bottled oxygen. This technique first conquered the mountain in 1953 when Sir Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing gained the summit. But in this attempt, the young Australians intend not to attack the mountain, but to seduce her. They had therefore chosen to use an alpine approach. No oxygen, a minimum of equipment, and only 5 climbers. The old technique is cumbersome, but it does allow the climbers an escape route if they need it. With this approach, each climber is virtually on his own.
Snow falling.
Come down. Advanced base will be here somewhere.
East Rongbo.
East Rongbo. Ah, so that's the normal route, yeah.
An alpine climb needs constant planning, assessing and reassessing the mountain to determine the exact route the expedition should take. Mr. Chu from the Chinese Mountaineering Association is a veteran of the mountain. He gained the summit in 1960, but during the climb, he lost his toes and some of his fingers to frostbite.
Northeast ridge block.
Yeah, right.
Wind.
Yeah.
So we should go early and early to camp.
Yeah, right. We'll have to go and establish a camp too.
Another reality of high-altitude climbing is the lack of air. The climbers enter a world almost devoid of oxygen, where the threat of death comes from a condition known as cerebral edema, a fatal retention of fluid in the brain. It can be avoided by careful acclimatization, and Dr. Jim Duff's main task is to ensure the team undergoes that acclimatization successfully.
Any headaches or any symptoms at all?
Not really, no. I had a bit of a headache yesterday when I climbed up the moraine wall.
Time to move. Several exploratory trips up the valley have paid off, and the Australian team has found an ideal site for their advanced base camp. The 3 tons of equipment and stores must be carried up the mountain by man and beast. Those packs they're carrying weigh about 40 kilos. But despite the thin air and the load of their packs, Andy and Tim still found strength to sing. And you're right, that water is freezing. High into the Rongbuk Valley, where the scenery is breathtakingly awe-inspiring. And it was good to see that yaks definitely have a mind of their own. Advanced Base Camp, which would become the expedition's headquarters, was quickly established in a small valley at the fork of the Rongbuk Glacier. The only moment of panic came when Tim realized the last time he'd seen his climbing boots was in the bedroom of his Sydney home.
My boots still haven't been found. Might just be some boxes. I'll give a muesli slice to anyone who finds my boots. That's what you've been waiting for, isn't it? You've been hiding them in your tent.
Yeah, that'll be all right. Well, muesli's really high.
No, they're Vitalwits, you see.
At high altitudes, food becomes even more vital. The calorie drain is so great that the climbers knew they needed high-energy meals to survive. The expedition ran a vegetarian menu with an emphasis on natural foodstuffs, and each item had to be checked and repacked for ferrying up the mountain. Oh, by the way, Tim's boots turned up. A totally oblivious Andy had them in the bottom of his kit bag. From Advanced Base, the acclimatization process went on, with the team making sorties into neighboring peaks, getting stronger on a daily basis as their bodies became accustomed to the rarefied air. But these sorties weren't without hazard, and one of the incidents retold to Sherpa Naranchestro showed that each day on the mountain was a day spent with fear.
Oh, Tenzing went instead of you?
You can't see from here, but the moraine ridge above the glacier was really, really dangerous.
It looked like Lincoln was going to commit suicide at one stage. He'd cut out in the middle of this moraine slope and he was going to go diagonally across it. These huge
suddenly the rocks started to
coming
come down. Just because it suddenly they got warm and all the snow started to melt, and suddenly there was this fuselage of
You came back pretty
rocks.
quickly, though. Ooh,
Boy,
bad
yeah.
day for carrying loads up to Camp 1, I think.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Really loose. Really loose. And there was one rock came bouncing down about the size of a washing machine or something. Bounced about 100 feet in the air, and then just kept bouncing, and its last bounce was about sort of 30 yards away from us, and all this, we were up on a bit of a rise by then, all these shards went everywhere. And we thought, well, let's go and wait on the glacier for him. Oh, it was amazing.
A curious mix here. Terror with tranquil natural beauty. And that was the setting for the young Australians as they grew stronger day by day, preparing for their assault on Everest. With the establishment of Advanced Base Camp as a functioning unit, the next step was to move onto the mountain proper to set up Camp 1. But that would have to wait. The weather closed in. There was a great feeling among the team. Living in each other's pockets in cramped and uncomfortable conditions, facing constant danger, could have had everyone on edge. But the mood was up. Andy's addiction to that most Australian of spreads, Vegemite, had puzzled the team's other Nepalese member, Tenzing Sherpa, who remarked on Andy's consumption.
That's a winner of an ad.
It's possible to use the yaks to transport equipment part of the way to Camp 1 until they strike the glacier, which even the seemingly unstoppable yak can't handle. Remember, we said yaks had a mind of their own? Watch. That box contained some of the camera gear, which, luckily for the sake of this program, wasn't damaged. The yaks turned back. It's up to the climbers to carry the gear up the mountain. And it's becoming increasingly apparent the snow cover is much heavier than anyone expected, which means the avalanche danger is continual. So, with heavy snow still cladding the north face of Everest, the decision is made to set up Camp 1 about 2 kilometers away, an area the young Australian team believed to be relatively safe from avalanche danger. It's bitterly cold, with a strong wind sweeping down the valley. But once Naran has set up his kitchen and his specialty, a spicy vegetable and noodle stew, was sending out tantalizing aromas, well, it was almost like home. Camp 1 established, and it was time to finalize the route they'd use for their attempt on Everest. Two things became apparent on their climb to the base of the North Face. The first was that the glacier which guarded the approach was secure. No hidden crevasse into which a climber breaking through the snowy lid could fall into white oblivion, or none which they found. Secondly, that here at 6,000 meters, the heat became intense, with the sun reflected from mile-high ice walls, and only a minimum of radiation absorbed by the thin atmosphere. The climbing became agonizing.
But I mean, we could always climb one of these other ways and fix a rope down there.
Yeah. Okay, well...
Finding the right route became all important. Almost like an exam, the mountain was setting the young Australians. No grades here, though. This was success or failure, life or death.
Yeah, you want to go to the right.
But if you had the rope coming down through there,
Just straight down through this time?
yeah, that'd be okay. And then you'd have a bit of diagonal part at the top, and it doesn't look too steep once you get past that next little rock.
I reckon once you make steps, it'll be good. Oh yeah, I agree with that, but I don't, except for the fact that you've got to zoom out this from the steep rock. You reckon it's really steep? Yeah. Yep, that's about right. Oh, good. What was on your map, Jeff? What have we...
It had been a long time since any of the team had climbed seriously, especially on snow and ice. And getting geared up was not without its problems.
But we should be able to get up a couple of 500 feet and fix that, I think. And that'll make a good start, make it a really good start for our next day.
Well, it could be icy over the rocks.
Go right to the left of the left-hand end of the rock. It's only another 20 yards.
Actually, this whole thing could wobble a bit.
Well, this is it. We're
Their
off.
equipment is minimal. Ropes,
Let's go for it.
ice axes, and the vital crampons. Lightweight alloy frames with 12 spikes would strap onto the climbing boots, allowing a stable foothold on ice.
Okay. Oh, I see up there, guys. Yeah, okay. Good luck, good climbing. Take it easy.
"3,000 meters of almost vertical ascent awaited them, and a lucky break. A choke of snow formed an icy bridge onto the face, which made a comparatively easy start to the climb. Precision, precision and concentration. But muscles unused for months came into play, and with each upward step, a growing confidence in their own and each other's ability. And with that confidence, fear of the icy vertical lessened, to be replaced with the sheer joy of climber's nirvana.
Whew. What a day. Just so bloody big, that thing.
Felt big, did it?
Well, it didn't feel so big when we were on it. When you get back down to the glacier and look up.
I'd say in all we got up about 1,000 feet from the Bergstrand. Get up really, really fast. It's a good angle. Oh, that's what's good about the face, I reckon. Gets you up quickly. I must confess, I'm not really convinced that it's the best route yet. Which route do you reckon? I think the most surefire one of success would be the Japanese route. But to do a new route, I guess that's the line that we're on now. Would be good.
There's one of those big scoops that we've got to cross. Well, I mean, there's no choice. I mean, you just got to cross it. And the best thing to do is probably cross it more or less horizontally, so you can get across it pretty quickly. I mean, as the afternoon sun was getting round into the hollow of that, quite a lot of ice was starting to come down, quite big bits. I mean, only, you know, that sort of size, but enough to make a nice sound on your helmet and bruise your arm. So it was a good place to finish, really. Good days. Good first day on the hill, for sure.
To save carting the climbing gear backwards and forwards from Camp 1 to the ice face, it was stashed in a crevasse in an area thought to be safe from avalanche danger. As the weather began to close in, Greg, Jeff and Andy made it back down from higher on the face where they'd found a possible site for Camp 2 and had buried vital equipment in another spot also considered free from avalanche danger.
There's a tenuous but reasonable campsite there, and there may even be one about another 400 feet above, but that remains to be seen.
Now it's just probably another 2 long rope lengths to a point where we can get above the cliffs, and then after that going into the couloir looks quite easy, even walking really. But hell, it's spectacular. Phew.
And this was the scene next morning. A heavy snowfall overnight ruled out any climbing for days. The avalanche danger had been bad enough before. Now it would be suicidal. Time for a spot of socializing. The mountain's bad news, and the climber's grapevine has reported the arrival of a large American expedition over the spur from the Australian base camp. Well, welcome to the Everest Hilton.
It would have been a lot shorter. It would have been about a third of the distance to walk,
Yeah.
or carry to 3, as opposed to what we did.
Yeah, we had a big debate about...
These Americans are old Everest hands. They've seen the mountain in all her moods. And the team veteran, David Marr, has probably as good a working knowledge of her foibles as any man alive.
So, we're pretty happy with this way. It's steep up to here.
Beautifully direct. This climb, it's just an all-time classic. It's really clean and it's straight ahead. And it's comparable. I think it's a finer route than what the Japanese did in '80, and variation with the Hornbein Couloir. And I just wish we were really back there ourselves in the same place, not where we're at. Personally, I'd feel a lot better about it.
Which means, in climbing terms, that the young Australians have chosen a really tough route. The weather gods were being more than fickle. Another night, another 30 centimeters of snow, and Camp 1 was a mess. Jeff and Greg had stayed on at Camp 1, waiting for a break in the weather to resume the push up the face, but there was no chance right now.
Yeah, at least go. It's a bit heaviest fall yet. Won't be going up for a few days, I don't think.
We could even go down, eh?
Yeah, might have to, I think. Well, last night we had another 3 or 4 inches of fresh snow. Yesterday afternoon was very hot, and the snow from the previous night avalanched off, but with this fresh snow on the mountain's out of condition for probably another 2 or 3 days. So we've all decided to go down valley and stay down at advanced base camp and stop eating all the food that we've so laboriously carted up here to Camp 1. The avalanche danger now on the mountain's just too high. Yesterday we had some phenomenal avalanches drop off, and with this snow again, it looks like it's ready to do it again this afternoon.
Advanced base camp hadn't fared any better. The mess and equipment tents were sagging badly, and as all the snow shovels had been taken to Camp 1, Lincoln had to use the pressure cooker lid for a job it had never been designed to do. Tim dragged himself away from the Americans' luxurious base camp to the Spartan existence of the Australian advanced base, and Dave Marr's comments about the proposed Australian route were eagerly dissected.
Quite a big drop in there.
Yeah.
Whereas here is not so much of a drop.
Did it seem from his photos that you were looking into a couloir? That was in a couloir?
Oh, yeah. There's more wall on this side than this side.
Yeah,
But I don't think there's any doubt about us getting up there, is there, really?
Oh, no.
Up through that
The
rock.
crux of the climb.
Oh, no.
Well, no, the crux of the
Technically,
climb's the hard part, which is...
Technically.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think it will be.
So about 1,500 feet till it eases off.
Yeah, and then another 1,500 feet of just plodding through snow. It's going to be interesting to see what the snow's like up there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's going to be... It shouldn't be too windy yet, but there'll be enough to...
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see anyway, especially in here too. I mean, 2,000 feet of snow, but it's going to take it out of us.
That's going to be different.
It's going to be really deep snow.
The weather cleared, spirits were high, until the advance party suddenly discovered the mountain had yet another trick up her sleeve.
That's that stuff camp too. Yeah, sure does. Oh, no. Oh. Jesus.
The face had avalanched, and the gear that Greg, Jeff and Andy had so painstakingly carried up the face to set up Camp 2 has been swept away in tons of snow. But more importantly, the assessment had been wrong. Anyone spending the night there would have ended up like the equipment, buried in an icy grave. It was a valuable lesson.
Meters down from the Berkshire on the face, and an avalanche has taken away our Camp 2. There's a really big avalanche come down. Looks like the big ice cliff was broken off and swept over the ridge and carried our camp with it. We found the tent. That's intact, but the rest of the stuff must be buried way down. Over.
Bloody spur, eh?
How much of the fixed ropes are left? Over. We can see a little bit of the first red fixed rope going up, then another bit going over that small rocky cliff, and then it looks like there's a bit, that traverse I did across the gully. So the fixed rope, yeah, it could well be all there. We're going to go up now and check the Berkshire and see what's happened to our gear up there.
The news at the Berkshire was even worse. The stash with all the climbing equipment, again in a presumably safe area, had also been hit by a massive avalanche. Boots, crampons and ice axes, all gone. The immediate problem, if the equipment wasn't found, could the expedition continue?
And the reason we've dug such a big hole looking for it all is because it's fairly important stuff,
Where it are.
like boots and crampons and ice axes.
Oh dear.
So we pretty well have to find it. So we just have to keep digging until we do.
It could be a real problem now. I think we can overcome it by scraping gear together. But for instance, people like Tim, who have very large feet, couldn't hope to find another pair of boots. Another avalanche. Couldn't hope to find another pair of boots. But I think everything else we can scrape together okay. It's just 2 days wasted, basically.
Bloody boots. They've got to be here somewhere.
I'll go you $10 we don't.
Yeah?
I'll go you $50 we don't.
Yeah? You
Yeah.
sure?
Yep.
Right. Not before I those five anyway. If we don't find them, I lose my boots. If we do find them, then you give me $50.
Yeah, it's there.
Mine will.
Oh, my. Oh, what a day, eh?
The equipment was never found. It probably will be in 2,000 years' time when the glacier empties itself at the foot of the mountain, but the expedition did continue. Ice axes and crampons were scrounged from the film crew. Greg and Lincoln managed to find climbing boots, but Tim's size, 12.5s, were unfittable. So he was forced to wear cross-country ski boots, overboots, and crampons. The fixed ropes, laboriously put into place days before, had been frozen in by the avalanches, so it was with a feeling of resignation that the slow, difficult job of freeing the ropes began. Pressing hard into the near vertical face, the young Australian team had to concentrate their very being into every labored upward step, trying to ignore their rasping coughs, the thinning air, and the searing cold of every lungful. But now the climb had real purpose. Every meter upward was one closer to their goal. The only problem at the moment was a pack of thick black clouds rolling up the Rongbuk Valley. This time, the weather closed in with a vengeance. It's 20 below. Days passed in impossible conditions. Nothing to do but wait on the mountain and the whims of the weather gods. Then, as suddenly as it began, the bad weather cleared. The immediate problem was to locate a suitable site for Camp 2. The exploratory climbs up the difficult face had been less than encouraging, and it was vital that a safe, comfortable camp be established to secure a firm foothold on the mountain. The unspoken thought among the team was that the previously selected site for Camp 2 had been totally blitzed by a huge avalanche. So, with the fickleness of the weather and the ever-present threat of avalanches, it was back to the vertical environment. Nothing looked promising until the team dug a precarious, narrow ledge, which would almost take a small tent, but not quite. For the non-climber, the drop is terrifying. 1,000 meters of almost vertical slope. Another link in the chain. The camp was christened 1.8. in the hope that by the next day, the young Australians would find a far more secure campsite. Sunrise is a red and angry dawn on the mountain, and it's a tense Greg Mortimer who relays the events of the previous night from Camp 1.8.
Didn't sleep all that well, I suppose, just at the height, but we got this constant bloody spin drift coming down all night, and it just buried the tent. It was a real pain in the arse. It's a decent snowfall, we'd be just blasted off the side, I reckon.
Did you have to get out of it?
We should have, but we didn't.
They're out of the precarious camp as soon as sunlight hits the slope, moving up in what's become a critical search for that much safer site. The barrier is this frozen, rocky overhang. Above lies easier territory, but to break through needs audacious climbing. And while Jeff belays the rope and tries to hold the camera steady, Greg tackles the climb of his life. It's the worst possible climbing surface. Icy, flaky rock, but he's through. And then, every upward step Greg takes on the spur unleashes more snow to bombard the unhappy camp.
I just got back to our tent site and found our tent flattened. Got 3 broken poles, and the snow that we were kicking from steps during the day, is just, the wet snow has just come down and flattened it like a pancake.
Well, you got 2 options, you guys. You either come down or you stay up there. It'd take you a couple of hours to get down only, so it'd still be time to come down.
Just going to come down, and I'm going to stay up here for the night and wait for you guys in the morning. Over.
Okay, great. We'll make a threesome tomorrow night then, on a hopefully luxurious campsite at the top of the ridge.
We went up and led all day, and Greg did the second lead. Really magnificent lead up a rock cliff. The sun didn't get to us till about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock I suppose, by which time Greg was inside the gully, inside the rock gully. He left his pack down below and he left his glasses in there, and he then continued on up and over the rock cliff and into the snow again. He spent about probably 2.5 hours to 3 hours in the snow without his glasses. Haven't heard from him yet this morning, but I'm really quite worried that both that he's lasted the night all right in the tent, and also that he hasn't got snow blindness, because there was an awful long time he spent in the snow yesterday without his glasses on.
But Jeff's worst fears were realized.
How are you feeling? Over?
Pretty good. Still, just one eye, you know, it's still pretty cloudy and stinging, and Tim's just arrived and given me another pair of his goggles, so that makes quite a difference as well.
How was last night?
Yeah, if you spend any time at all in the sunlight, you must wear extra protection, or even put something like a bandage or a sock over that eye. Over.
The next day, with Greg immobilized with snow blindness, Lincoln and Tim carry on the search for a suitable site for Camp 2. Even with the fixed ropes in what's now been called Greg's Gully, it's a dicey climb. Almost at 7,000 meters. And Tim's found some good deep snow, suitable for a snow cave for Camp 2. Lincoln takes over the digging as Tim reports back.
It's quite an arête, quite sharp, and the sides are very steep, but the snow's very deep, and well, I dug a big platform before Lincoln joined me, and it looks like you could make a very good snow cave. So that's what Lincoln is doing at the moment, hopefully. About the first place that I feel really safe on the mountain. Yes. Over.
So, how's Greg getting on with his snow blindness, Tim? Over.
He says he's feeling much better. He's holding his hands over his eyes, and he's got his goggles on, but then he is in the sunlight at the moment. But he's feeling good enough to come up to Camp 2 proper, to the comfortable confines of the snow cave. Over.
That's really good news. Just tell him that it's most important to keep putting the cream in, really, for the duration of the expedition, so he's got to be much more careful than he was. Over.
Greg and Tim move onto the exposed face while Lincoln's deep within the snow cave. And then it happened. Avalanche. And a monster.
I was carrying a load up to the newly established Camp 2, and actually I just finished relieving myself at the side of the fixed ropes, and I looked over my shoulder because I heard a rumble, and I saw this huge cloud about half a mile wide just billowing up over the ice cliffs, coming straight down for us. Greg was a little higher up the ropes, and I could see it was going to get him too.
And it just knocked me off my feet. I was on a Jumar, one Jumar, and I had my ice axe in, and I just knocked those out, knocked the ice axe out, so I just went down on the stretch of the rope, but it just, stretched it a long, long way. Sort of figured that the anchor might pop because it was such crappy snow. But then I got an axe in again, and I could stand up.
Well, the only thing I could do is lunge for an anchor, which was on the fixed ropes, and cling to it. And I just enough time to grab the rope, and I was smothered in, I suppose it must have been travelling at well over 50 or 60 miles an hour. And it lasted for ages and ages. Just snow and ice just kept pouring down on top of me.
I pushed my head into a footstep, and I put my hands in front of my face, trying to keep the powder out of my nose and my mouth, but it just sort of pounded my head into the snow, so I couldn't breathe for a while.
Finally, after, it must have been, I suppose, about 40 seconds, I realised that I was going to survive.
My first instinct was just get up and realise the anchor had held okay, for maybe by a miracle, I don't know.
It stopped. There was still a white cloud surrounding me. I couldn't see much whether Greg was okay or not, but I knew the avalanche had finished. It left me shaking like a leaf.
Greg and Tim had come within a hair's breadth of a tumbling white death. They were saved by a rope the size of a clothesline and tiny snow anchors, and luck, good fortune or fate, or as Greg said, a miracle. But the terror of sudden death remains.
Basically, I'm not coming up because I'm afraid. It looks to me that the face is still just laden, and your avalanche has made no impression at all on the face. Well, I'm not trying to, I guess I'm not trying to put anyone else off, but I must admit I'm just afraid of coming up. I just don't want to get the chop over.
And Jeff had other reservations.
It's got to the stage now, it seems to me, that we're really just not climbing with skill, but we're climbing on our luck. And to me, that's not very good mountaineering. You can only do that for a short period of time. I have a real, probably an almost paranoid fear of avalanches. I was buried in one in 1980 on Annapurna 3 in Nepal, and I had to be dug out. But the avalanches that are coming down off Everest now are bigger than I've ever seen in my life.
At 7,000 meters, the young Australians had reached an impasse. Time was beginning to run out with the approach of winter. Conditions which were unbelievably harsh before would become unremittingly hostile when winter struck in a relatively short while. And with the constant weather delays, a sense of urgency overcame the young Australian team when conditions were good. With Camp 2 well established, it had to be stocked with food and supplies in readiness for the summit push. Fears within the party were put aside, with the realization that now it was all or nothing. The entire team slogged through the lung-straining thin air, consolidating Camp 2, while Lincoln led upwards, setting fixed ropes as high on the mountain as possible.
We left the snow cave at 6 o'clock and went up the ropes that we'd fixed the other day. It was very, very cold though, extremely cold. Hands and feet were just frozen, very painful. And then with the rope that Naran and Tenzing brought up yesterday, we fixed all the way up into the rock band to the right of the Great Couloir, and that's where we ran out of rope. Looks pretty straightforward going from there on, although the avalanche danger, slab danger, is extreme.
Yeah, well, it's not...
Physically and emotionally drained after the hard slog, Camp 1 is an oasis of warmth, and Naran's pancakes a gourmet's feast. By now, the optimism is bubbling.
Actually, there's a bit of jelly and fruit stuff still in the billy up there.
Is there?
Thank you.
How did it feel anyway at 25,000 feet?
Oh, it felt dreadful. It's so cold this morning. It's hard to know how much is the cold and how much is the altitude. It's pretty bad. Yeah, it really takes it out of you. I mean, it's hard to tell also because when you've been up there for a while, you just sort of tend to get sort of less strong anyway. So it's hard to tell how much is the extra height and how much is the fact of cumulative weakening. Gee, that's a big phrase, isn't it?
It's impressive for you, Lincoln, actually. Yeah. Very good. Did someone write it down for you?
But you should have heard me yesterday.
A tactical retreat is called, and the team spends a few days at Advanced Base Camp in the peaceful sunlit valley. They must regain their strength and their mental stamina, focusing their all on the summit. It's a time for reflection.
One of the things about a small trip like ours is the fact that with 5 people, I mean, now when the weather is perfect, we're not on the mountain because we're recovering from our efforts of before. It reduces your success having fewer people, reduces your chances of success having fewer people, but it makes it more satisfying if you do succeed.
Waiting now wouldn't necessarily achieve anything. What we'll gain in the snow coming off the face, and so a decrease in avalanche danger, will lose by the wind becoming more intense, and the wind up high, if it does increase, will just be horrific. So I think this next week will be a week of making it or breaking it. We'll either climb to the summit or we'll have to retreat and call it a day.
I guess even though there's a lot of unforeseen things that can happen, I've still got this gut feeling that things are going to be okay. I'm quite positive, you know, even though there's a million things that can go wrong.
I think everybody physically is fit enough to get to the top. Really, what the problem is trying to build up enough mental inertia to keep going, just to be able to throw yourself into plod mode and slowly, in a rather bloody-minded way, grind your way to the top. When Messner soloed Everest, he ended up crawling, and I mean, if Messner crawls, then I'm quite prepared to crawl to get to the top. I think it's just going to be bloody hard work.
To make it to the top, it's going to take everything that we've got. And I think that the last few hundred feet to the summit are going to be the hardest thing that I've ever done. And in a way, I find that exciting.
The weather held. Now was the time to move out. But the tranquility of the valley had disguised a change in seasons, because stealthily, autumn had given way to winter. The temperature had dropped, but the snow clouds stayed away. The years of planning, the preparatory climbs, had distilled into this moment. The young Australians knew they were pitting themselves against horrendous odds. Climbing without oxygen, attempting a new route, climbing into an Everest winter. All thought about the lack of oxygen, because reactions were slowed, and the dangers of mountaineering were doubled or trebled in extreme altitudes. Death, they knew, was never far away. At the base of Everest, Lincoln knew he'd come to the end of his tether. The cough which had plagued him for weeks had suddenly degenerated into bronchitis, and each mouthful of frigid air cut into his lungs like a knife. His body was telling him that to go on would place not only himself at risk, but also jeopardize the others. For Greg Mortimer, Lincoln's decision was devastating.
As soon as I sort of take big lungfuls of cold air, I just... I don't know. It could take ages. I mean, when Tim had, I don't know what he had, whether he had bronchitis or what he had, but he wasn't taking antibiotics for it. But when he got a cough just from going up there for a day or two, I mean, it was 8 days before he came back up again. I mean, he was, you know, and we came up later than you because he wanted to hang down an extra day. You know, it's...
Thing is, I think...
Greg knew the team needed Lincoln's strength if they were going to make it. He had to convince him to continue.
Well, I've been thinking of it in terms of 4 of us plugging steps. I don't think Jeff will go past Camp 3.
Don't you?
I still reckon we've only got 1 hit. We've got the strength for 1 hit.
Yeah,
you know, nothing more. Once we do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we've got strength for a few more days after that.
Yeah.
And that's it. So when we go, it's got to be right.
Yeah.
Otherwise we'll blow it.
Yeah. I mean, Andy just have to bloody pull his finger out. And if you have a good talk to him tonight, or up there, at Camp 2, you know, he will.
The stark realization that Lincoln is determined to stop is shattering. A terrifying prospect. Winter conditions, time rapidly running out. One of the team down, still more than half the mountain left to climb, and the weather closes in.
Camp 2, do you read me? Over.
Reading you loud and clear, Camp 1. Go ahead, over.
Well, last night's weather report was pretty dismal. Up about where you are now at 7,000 metres, it's meant to be -16 with a 20-knot wind. And at the top of Everest, it's -30 and a 30-knot wind, which according to wind chill charts, -56. So doesn't sound too good up there. Over.
It's howling. Yeah, it's certainly not a day to be up there. I guess you're glad in a way that this wind's here. Gives you a chance to recover from your chest infection. Yeah, I think we'll come down. In fact, we already made the decision to come down, looking at the wind higher.
The Arctic jet stream has ravaged its way across the frozen wastes of Tibet to hurl itself with blinding fury on Everest's upper slopes, with a force capable of plucking a mere human from the face and hurtling him into oblivion. Chastened by this vast display of natural power, the climbers move out from the safety of Camp 1. This time, though, they're back to full strength. The enforced rest has given Lincoln time to recover, a mask taking the edge from the freezing air. The climb up to Camp 2, as fraught with danger as ever, had become familiar territory, and the safety of the snow cave is reached relatively quickly. A decision is made to rest at the cave overnight to conserve strength, and Tim is bursting with anticipation.
We've been waiting for this for, well, years, and the conditions are right. Tomorrow morning, as soon as it's light, we'll set off from here, carrying tents, food, sleeping bag, but making it as light as possible. And we'll try and climb up to the top of the couloir, which is about 4,000 feet above here. There we'll find a campsite and try and have a comfortable night as possible. The next day, weather permitting, we'll go to the summit.
Above 7,000 meters, thoughts come slowly. Actions happen with a dreamlike quality. The oxygen-less air drugging the mind. But the cold was real, cutting through the fabric and the skin deep into the bone. Measured in real time, Australian farewells were more than 2 months old. By the mountains' time, they could have left Australia several lifetimes ago, because reality was a cold, vertical void, gasping breath, and one careful foot in front of the other. A rocky barrier to overcome, leading up to the vast snow slab they'd christened White Limbo. Those days spent analyzing the mountain, probing for weaknesses, had paid off. The plan was working. Up to 7,300 meters, and at least the snow appeared less likely to avalanche than faces further down. With the full team strung out on White Limbo, everything appeared to be going well, until...
Hello, Cam 1. I'm watching movement on the face, and one climber's static, but it looks like somebody's turned back just above the rock in the middle of the white void. It was just the last climber on the ropes, and presumably they're exhausted or dehydrated or feeling the effects of the altitude, so we can't really put a name to it.
It was Jeff, with all the symptoms of cerebral edema.
I started in the last half hour to get really violent headaches and see a split image, and I was dizzy, and my legs started to go from under me.
Any higher and Jeff would have died. The only remedy is to get down and get down quickly. A violent headache, double vision, shaky legs, and Jeff begins the loneliest and most important climb of his life. It's slow and it's careful. A split second of blind panic for the watchers below. Jeff's dropped his pack, and it looks too much like a body for anyone's comfort. "7,500 meters, and a slight respite, because instead of the incessant upward drive, the route takes them on a traverse to the bottom of the Great Couloir. Instead of looking straight up, though, everyone becomes aware of the vast drop to their left. Just one slip. It's best not to think. Just on sunset, Greg and Tim discovered a perfect site for Camp 3 in a natural crevasse, which Tim tried to burn down. As soon as the sun leaves the slopes, the temperature drops 20 degrees, and the ice cave provided a chilly haven. Time for a meal of soup, cheese, and noodles. Then exhaustion brings a sleep filled with half-remembered dreams. There's still 1,400 meters to climb to the summit. They're exposed, beyond any help, well and truly into cerebral edema territory. And if that wind starts again, they're dead.
What could be the symptom of getting
Jeff thought he was going to die last night, scared to fall asleep at Camp 2 in case he never woke up. He's made it back to Camp 1, and Jim Duff pumped some of the medicinal oxygen into him. Hopefully, Jeff's safe.
Because human bone and flesh can't stand 270 atmospheres.
While Jeff's getting the life-giving oxygen, high on the mountain, the day begins brilliantly at Camp 3. The decision is not to use ropes. Climbing conditions perfect on the icy face. Crampons biting firmly into the surface. Don't think about slipping. It's going to be impossible to break the fall of 1.5 kilometers. Don't think about the spindrift avalanches. Maybe they won't get bigger. Don't think about the rasp in the throat or the red-hot iron bands around the chest. Just climb. Deep into the Grand Couloir. Sunset coming on, and they must reach the top of this giant gully and find a campsite before dark. A minuscule ledge was all that was needed for the base of Camp 4. It would provide shelter, certainly, but warmth? No.
How are you four doing up there, over?
We're just getting covered by a spindrift avalanche at the moment. Well, everyone's fine, very tired.
What time do you reckon you'll start tomorrow then for the summit, over?
Oh, God knows. Hopefully by about 10 o'clock, over.
3/4 of the greatest mountain in the world has been conquered. The final quarter, no one could predict that.
Really good luck, guys. We'll be down here watching every move. So keep yourselves warm and go for it, huh? Over.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. We all heard that. Looks like we've got a really good day for it, so a little bit brief. But there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do it, I think. Or some of us anyway.
There's a belief the mountain chooses just who will conquer her. Right now, that choice was being made.
Well, the climbers have passed 26,000 feet now and are well into the what we call the death zone. There's only 1/3 the oxygen there is at sea level up there, and they'll be dehydrating with breathing so rapidly. They'll be gasping. Every upward step will be a mighty effort, and they've only got a few hours of survival time up there.
Even through the telescopic lens, the climbers looked like ants. But a recovered Jeff saw enough to know someone was in trouble. It was Lincoln. A heart-shattering decision, but the only one he could make.
Until I started to come down, and I just decided that my pace was too slow, and that was further sort of slowed down by a few coughing fits here and there. So I just thought I'd have no chance of well, maybe I'd get there today, but there's no way I'd get back. And not being prepared for a bivvy, well, it would definitely be frostbite country up there. I think if anyone has to spend the night out.
Only 3 left. The day is nearly over. Just a few hours of daylight left. Conditions are inconceivable, and Naran's worried.
But not today, though. I think only tomorrow.
Yeah?
Yeah, already too late.
No, they're going to make it up today.
Today?
Yeah. They're cracking the final rock barrier. They've got 2 to 3.5 hours sunlight left. And once they're through this rock barrier, and they're all going quite strongly, even Andy's catching up now, they're going to, they've got an easy walk to the summit ridge.
Nothing's easy up here, but Tim's climbing strongly, his pack with all his survival equipment back at Camp 4. The cold is intense, deep, bitter, and nagging. The sun's just about to set. Andy's broken his crampon. 2 choices, fix the crampon or die. But to fix the crampon, the gloves must come off and the fingers will be frostbitten. Decision? Take off the gloves and fix the crampon. And so, 50 meters from the summit, Andy Henderson takes a decision that saves his life, destroys his hands, and ruins his summit chance.
There. I can just see them going. Boy, they're so close to the summit.
Only Greg and Tim left. And the sun is setting on the world.
It's hard to believe I'm near the top of Mount Everest.
They're at the summit. They're on the top. I think they're waving at us. They're on top. They're on top. Over.
This is the summit of Mount Everest. Chomolungma, Mother Goddess of the Earth. The world is absolutely staggeringly beautiful from up here. In fact, it's beyond superlatives.
No elation now, just relief. The elation and joy would come later. A climb to be enshrined in mountaineering annals. A new route, no oxygen. Now they have to get back safely. A nightmarish climb in the dark. Andy's hands dead. Greg fading fast from cerebral edema. Even Tim's strength sapped. Safety at Camp 4, but it's obvious Greg Mortimer is in a bad way. While Andy Henderson's distress is painfully obvious.
And it would be, I think it'd be a good idea if Colin and Jeff could come up to Camp 2 tomorrow. Andy's just going to need help on the ropes, otherwise he's going to cut his hands to pieces.
Triumph comes costly on Everest. 3 days at extreme altitudes have taken their toll, but they're alive. Andy painfully inches his way down the ropes, unaware that higher on the mountain Greg has slipped, swooped down the ice, managing to break his fall only meters from a kilometer-high drop. Andy's hands need attention, and quickly. First, oxygen, then to find out just how badly damaged is the tissue.
Talking about it, Jeff, you got really dry here.
It must get down to sea level, and in the meantime as much oxygen as possible, because these tissues need it to heal.
But they never did heal. 4 months later, Andy underwent surgery in a Sydney hospital to remove one thumb and all his fingers. And Greg was to recover, although slowly, from his close call with death. Weeks later, Sydney Airport.
Congratulations. Well done. Fantastic. Congratulations. In the press room. Okay. Sorry, Angus.
They're at the summit. They're on the top.
Gaze in awe and reflect on the courage, determination and mental stamina which put two young Australians on the roof of the world. A stage far removed from 20th century civilization. A stage where only the brave can act out their play of life.